wants to hear them. You want to say something into the mic so I know that it works?
Testing.
Okay. I guess it works. I guess here we are.
Oh, this is that Google Doc.
Are you just looking at the notes for the show for the first time?
Yes. Well, I wanted to create some excitement for the fans.
Well, that's one way of doing it. I want them completely unprepared.
I want them all to feel as uneasy as I am.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty uneasy too. So you came swooshing in here.
Yes.
With a look of glee in your eyes and a box in your hand. And what the thing that's in your hand is something that says, what's that box say? It says
dog silencer Max.
Max, not regular dog silencer. I love dead air when you take pictures.
This is the professional model. You may be wondering why I would bring this into our show.
I don't wonder at all. I have two really annoying dogs that just bark at you the entire time that you're in my house.
Honestly, I wasn't even I did think of your dog sort of secondarily, and I was like, maybe Mike could use this too. But really, my joy that I'm coming in with today is I may have mentioned I have a dog neighbor.
You have not mentioned that you have a dog neighbor.
This dog neighbor is my nemesis. And it has created sort of an awkward situation because I really love those neighbors. We're very close with them. We know them since we moved in. It's like neighbor friends.
Like my Trump neighbors next door that fly the Trump flag.
Just almost like that. But you can't silence that with this, unfortunately. So in any case, it was kind of delicate because they did have this dog whose name shall remain nameless. She shall remain nameless.
What's the dog's name?
Dog's name is Dog.
Okay.
Dog is...
What, are you afraid the neighbors are going to listen to this? Because they're going to be more pissed at what you did than the fact that you named their dog on the internet.
Here's the thing. The dog is just... every time we walk outside, it sounds like I'm going to be killed. It takes me back to horrible times in my ancestors' lives when Doberman pincers were chasing them down and things like this. Dog's... I'm telling you.
Are you comparing this to the Holocaust?
You said it. I didn't say it. I did not say that.
This is like a transgenerational memory.
It's, I think, epigenetic.
Persecution. Yes, that's the word.
Right. Epigenetic. So when I hear a dog barking with a bloodthirsty venom and viciousness, it makes me upset. Okay. So I'm going, every time I'm working from home, I go to the backyard. I can't talk on the phone because it's so loud.
What kind of dog is it?
It's a boxer.
Okay.
But the loudest, most vicious, you know how sometimes dogs bark and you go,
yes, I do.
But it's not like I'm going to kill you bark. It's a like, hi, or I'm playing or bored bark. This is I'm going to kill you bark. I can smell your man flesh and you're mine. Right. That's this dog. So I'm like, what do I say? Every time I see my neighbors, I never bring it up. I'm afraid because I don't want them to feel like I'm attacking them or anything like that. I just didn't want to create like a mean neighbor thing with these particular neighbors.
Yes. Do you think your neighbors are unaware that their dog goes savage every time you walk outside?
Well, that's the thing I always wonder about. I'm like, don't they know that this is probably upsetting my family and me and all hours of the night? I mean, and it's incessant. The biggest thing is when you would go outside with anybody, the kids were out in the back constantly, rah, rah, rah. It's hard to ignore, right? Mm-hmm. So one day I had just had it. And I was like, fuck it. I'm like, there's got to be, somebody must have solved this problem. Because I had been fantasizing on how do you poison a dog without it being traceable. I had all of these fantasies. I'm like, what can I do? How do I get away with this, Because it was really upsetting. So I found the dog, and this episode is brought to you free of charge by Dog Silencer Max. Get your peace and quiet back.
It says, there's a sticker on it that says 40% louder.
My favorite sticker. Now, 40% louder. So I thought to myself, you know what? I did a little research by reading the blurbs, and it says it was humane, and all it does is emits a hypersonic or supersonic frequency, and it trains the dog. It automatically gets triggered. So when the dog barks out of boredom, it emits this low frequency that we can't hear sound that makes it stop. And ultimately, automatically, it will train the dog not to bark out of boredom.
Wow. So, in essence, you're annoying the dog with this the same way the dog has been annoying you.
But it's better because making my life more livable. And I have to say, all things that advertised are true.
So this has worked.
Yes.
The dog no longer barks when you go outside.
I haven't heard the dog in days. I think I was like, have you heard that dog? And so, no, I haven't heard the dog.
Maybe the other neighbor poisoned it.
Maybe. But, so Dog Silencer Max. And
wow, shit, I got to get one of these.
We're back. Welcome to
house.
Recovery in the Middle Ages, the podcast about two middle-aged suburban dads in their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm Nat X.
Mike R.
And boy, do we have a show for you today.
Do we.
On RMA. We discuss the Dog Silencer Max at length and ad nauseum. And we've got all kinds of articles and fun and games and recovery to discuss. All this and more on a very special edition from Gray Skull Studios on Long Island of RMA.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you for indulging me. It was
you know what?
It's not cheap.
So, my dogs are exceptionally annoying.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not just around you. It's anytime, somebody walks past the front of the house, the dogs go ballistic.
This will train those dogs.
I have put these vibrating collars on them that after a week, they just ignore them.
Yeah.
They make a buzz and they vibrate. But I didn't get the shock ones because I'm not an asshole. So I'm not.
This is very humane, apparently. And if the dog doesn't bark, it does not emit just like that thing. But
I wonder if it affects like mice and stuff too.
Oh, good question.
Like mice don't bark, as far as I know.
Not usually,
but not the ones around here. Okay, how much was that?
100. It was a lot. For what it is.
But what price can you put on peace of mind now?
That's what I'm saying. It was like $140. I got the spicy one. I was really mad when I bought it.
What do you mean the spicy one?
Well, there's like
the one with 40% more?
40% louder. But I positioned it in such a way because there's a hole in one of the wickets or whatever. And so it has to face the dog's area. So now it's like coming through the fence. It's noticeable, although I did get a camouflage cover for it, $10 extra. So,
wow.
But if I'm asked about it, I have a very simple answer. I'll just explain what it is, and haven't you noticed how quiet it's been?
Did you think that maybe the neighbors bought the dog because they want it to bark at things that are like breaking into the house, maybe?
But here's the thing. It will still bark at stuff like that. So when I'm coming home, sometimes the dog will still give me a little bark.
Okay.
But it's just not out of boredom anymore. That's
right.
So it trains it.
How do you know the state of mind of the neighbor's dog, though? How do you know it's barking because it's bored as opposed to it's barking because, it just wants to fucking bite your balls?
Either way, this is what I want to communicate.
Wow. So it was over $100.
Yes.
You know what else is over $100 but worth the money?
Sober Link.
Yes. Well, I think it's over $100. I never bought one. I think the device is.
It's a serious piece of equipment.
Yeah. Anyway, imagine somebody questioning your sobriety, and then you send them days, weeks, or even months worth of reports detailing your progress.
Data.
Is it
data?
Do you do the plural of data? Do you use data as singular or plural? You're an English major graduate.
I use it as both, kind of like sheep.
I looked at the
One
data.
Sheep, three sheep.
There are data. Or there is data.
I would say a lot of data.
To avoid having to make that choice. Yeah, okay. Makes sense.
Adjust the front part, but I don't actually know what's
Anyway, with SoberLink, you can do that. You can send people data, right? About your not drinking. SoberLink's remote alcohol monitoring system allows you to reinforce patterns of trust with those who matter most. Or the occasional naysayer. In other words, the douchebag in your life who is like, oh, you drinking? You still drinking?
Wait, why?
Yeah.
Just try this just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's German.
No, you're still not drinking?
Why?
Yeah. Here's why it's a game changer. Scheduled daily tests become part of your new routine, showing consistency in your efforts. Built-in facial recognition ensures that doesn't matter how slow I go, I'm going to fuck it up. Each test is unmistakably yours. Tamper sensors safeguard any attempts to cheat the system.
Don't cheat the system.
Why would you want to cheat?
What is
the breathalyzer?
Really, folks? Come on.
Who would have thought of that?
Damn it.
The real magic. What's the real magic? Advanced.
Is it the friends you make?
Advanced reporting is apparently the real magic. This feature shares your progress instantly with detailed, easy-to-read reports sent directly to your loved ones.
Progress, not perfection.
Indeed. It is not just about proving you're sober. It's about sharing your success, establishing patterns of trust, and dispelling doubts with hard evidence.
Hard evidence,
Hard
folks.
evidence.
Give it up.
Yeah. You guys know we only back what we believe in.
Damn right.
And this system is the real deal. Apparently, we only believe in SoberLink and this dog silencer.
This is it.
That's what we back.
Folks, you only need two things in life. The dog silencer max and SoberLink.
www.soberlink.com/middle-ages to sign up and receive $50 off a device. If they're giving you $50 off the device, it's probably an expensive device.
Well, I think it isn't. We're supposed to try and make it sound like it's affordable and accessible. But it's not that expensive. And what's it worth to you, too?
Well, like I said about the dog silencer, what price can you put on your loved one's peace of mind?
Exactly.
There you go.
Or my own peace of mind. SoberLink. Get one today. Do we have another SoberLink story?
Yeah, I don't know where it is.
Okay.
I mean, I just didn't. Do you want me to stop to look for it?
Tune in next week for a SoberLink story. If you guys remember, the great G Money Smooth had a tremendous amount of success with SoberLink. We were talking about SoberLink before they even approached us to advertise. So, really, SoberLink, go for it. Soberlink.com/middle-ages.
Correct.
Thank you.
I got an email yesterday. One of the few listeners that we still have sent me an email. I'm going to call her CB because I don't have permission to read her name on the show.
Yes.
But CB says, the title of the email is Still Listening, which makes you amongst a very small cohort of people. But thank you.
Yes.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Just wanted to let you know that I've been listening from day one, all caps, and will never stop. Never
I'm your number
stop.
one fan.
You guys help me more than you think. I mean, I wasn't thinking we were helping at all, but that's awesome.
That's great.
Thank you, and goodbye from Quebec, Canada. Bonjourné. Si.
Les Québécois.
Yes, oui. So that's nice. It's always nice to get a reminder that there's still people that are listening to the show.
Oui, merci beaucoup de listen to the show.
Écoutez
de la
extravaganza.
Extravaganza. Yes, thank you so much. I would love to visit Quebec.
You've not been? Have you been to Montreal?
Montreal?
Or Quebec City?
Quebec.
Quebec City is a beautiful place.
I can't remember where I went. Ottawa. I was in Ottawa and Montreal.
Ottawa's fucking... What's Ottawa?
Well, you get beer there when it's right across the border.
Oh.
I went to SUNY Potsdam and Ottawa, man, 18, to drink. And in, America, it's 21 to rock. No, 18 to rock, 21 to roll.
Right.
In Canada, it's once you hit 18, you do it all.
Yeah, that explains why Dimitri, his fraternity, has planned a fall break trip to Montreal. So he just put down his $500 and they get a bus that crosses the border with a bunch of frat boys and they go drinking in the bars and probably create an international incident that's going to cost me an insane amount of money. And I'm going to have to fly up there and bail him out of fucking Canadian prison.
Yeah.
Can't wait for that. So that's coming up in the fall.
Excitement.
Yeah. So this was a week for me.
How was your week?
My week was, well, the reason we didn't do a show last Tuesday is because I had to give a deposition in a case that I was part of as part of my job. So I had to sit there and be interrogated by an attorney who asked me questions for 4 hours, and I had to answer them.
That sounds like fun.
No, it's horrible.
Deposition party.
No, I don't recommend.
No.
And so that was Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday I had to drive up to Oneonta to pick up the boy and bring him back for the summer. And
already?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then Thursday I had more work, and Friday, So it was a fucking busy week, But
yeah, it's ending very early. We had a concert. I guess the school year's ending. for everybody.
It is. It's coming up so fast. Something funny happened to me the other day. I've been operating under the assumption that I am 57 years old, like for most of the year, until Erin reminded me that I'm actually only 56. And
did you remember I had some problem like that?
Did you?
I thought I was 46 for this entire year.
Oh, how old are you?
45.
Okay.
I had no idea.
I had no idea either.
Same thing,
and Erin was like, what the fuck?
I was arguing with my wife
matter
about
with
it.
you? Like, yeah, me too. I'm like, I'm telling you. And she's like, honey, let's do the math. And I'm like, fuck, there's math involved. I can't.
I had this exact conversation with Christine. I was like, no, I'm 46. I think I would know.
Apparently I don't know, but it was amazing, like what that did, shaving that 1 year off of my life.
Did you feel great?
I felt 10 years younger by being 1 year younger.
You don't,
because when you're 57, you're staring fucking 60 in the face. But when you're 56, you can still labor under the illusion that you're in your middle 50s.
4 years. That's like a college degree. 4 years left.
Right.
You can graduate and be 60.
So talk to me next year, you know. But so Canada, I was just thinking, I went up to my late wife and I drove up there for a trip one year, and we had just bought this shitbeater Lincoln Continental. It was from the 70s. And
nice.
We get in this thing and we, get it across the border. We go to Quebec City. We have a good time. We drink a lot and eat a lot. And then we were going to take the slow way back. We were going to come back through Maine and then just drive down through New England. And so we get to this border crossing in Maine, and God, have I told this story before? Yeah. Anyway, we pull this giant Lincoln Continental, up to the border crossing, and it's one guy and a dog. And they're like, they take one look at us and they're like, why don't you pull over there?
You got a pretty mouth.
For a minute. Ooh. So I pull the car over and they're like, you don't mind if we have this dog, sniffing your car and stuff. I'm like, absolutely not. Because at this, I was actually sober during this.
Yeah, go for it.
Actually, so we weren't drinking wine. You know what? We were drinking wine in Quebec City. I don't know what I was. It was the early 90s. So I could have been sober. I could have not been.
Possible.
But I wasn't doing drugs. So I knew there was nothing in the car, but they were convinced there was something in the car. So they took the seats out. They did the whole night. They called other people in, and I was there for like 3 hours while they ripped that car apart down to the studs.
Jeez.
And they were so disappointed that they didn't find anything.
What do you think they're going to find?
I don't know.
Did they put the car? I always wondered, like, once they do that.
Yeah, they screwed the seats back in. Yeah. But I mean, they weren't very apologetic about it.
Yeah, they don't care.
Douchebags. Anyway,
Canadians.
I won't say I've been avoiding Canada since then, but it has colored my perception. And I wonder if my name is on a list somewhere. Probably. But I've traveled for business a few times and no problems.
It's a big country. My kids want to go to, I think, Niagara Falls.
Yeah, I got to do that trip. Maybe I'll do that trip later this summer.
Yeah, that would be nice. We're in the middle of getting ready for the summer trips. My wife always has something planned.
Do you know where you're going this year?
Lake George again with a bunch of Max's friends, families, like we did. I think we do that every summer. And that's the big trip, I think. I'm hoping. I'm also going up to Washington, D.C. with my business partner for a couple of days.
Ooh, last weekend?
Yeah.
What are you guys going to do? You're going to go tour the White House?
There's a tennis tournament that he's a big tennis fan, and he's like, we're going to this tournament. I'm like, okay.
Social trip then?
Sort of. Yeah, mostly. Just for fun. And but it's like I've never been away from my kids more than one night. So this is kind of like I've been put into a situation. Like I'm glad that he sort of just did it because now I've got to confront my fears of abandoning my children, which has been...
That's an interesting...
Yeah, it's been lingering ever since I got sober. I've always had this, and I think a lot of you out there may understand this. Like once you get sober, you're trying to make up for lost time, or I was trying to make up for lost time with my kids. Not that I was absent physically, but emotionally, mentally.
Yeah, so I'm checked out, right?
Yeah, so I'm always like feeling bad if I go out. So this will be a good...
Well,
test.
I think you'll be okay.
Yeah.
You know,
the kids are getting older.
You can always call home. FaceTime is a good way of, you know.
I can FaceTime, and
but I found that when I go away on business trips and I call home and FaceTime, they don't want to talk to me.
Yeah, they just. I'm sure.
It's only when I'm here.
I'll find that out. Yeah, They're not going to care. Yeah, but the kids are doing great. The spring concerts are happening, and we have to schlep all of them. And Max and Noah were both in a band concert.
Same one?
Different one. Not at the same one yet. Although Noah does the backstage crew.
Right.
So it was really cool to see Noah and Max at the same show. They're like working the same gig.
Yeah.
I was like,
that's
all
cool.
right. You know, Noah's doing sound and Max is playing with the band. So that was a lot of fun.
I'm waiting for you to get Noah get his chops up on the drums, because like I've been sitting down here in the basement this past week. I finally picked up my electric guitar for the first time in years. And I've been trying to play a couple of things and thinking, man, you know, Nat could put some tasty leads in right here, and then Noah on the drums, and maybe I can get Ben to do 3 notes on the bass, and then we have Neil Young and
we got a band,
Crazy Horse.
Well, I got to say, Noah's been working. He got the bug to practice, and he's been practicing like crazy on the drums. So he might be ready to rock.
I'm telling you, there are several rock and roll songs that can be played. I mean, the whole punk movement was basically people with Noah's level of talent.
Right, that's what I keep telling him. You don't need a college degree.
You know, I mean that in the broadest sense and in the nicest way. I mean, I'm a fan as well. But
yeah, like the drums for AC/DC or Weezer are very straightforward. It's not like Rush or something.
Yeah.
So
I mean, rock doesn't have to be complicated.
That's the beauty.
It can be.
That's
like
the
you
beauty.
can geek out on Yes and Rush and, you know,
the best
Al
rock
Di Meola
songs.
and shit like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's also the Ramones, and there's also
4 chords.
Neil Young, 3 chords, you know.
4 chords.
4.
1,
Yeah.
4, 5, back to 1.
See, you understand theory. Okay. So I have a Whizzinator this week.
Oh, really?
It's time for the Whiz.
A whiz bomb.
Nobody beats the Whizzinator.
Whiz bomb.
Okay. So I was thinking about, I've been listening to a book, an audio book by Peter Coyote, and I mentioned it on the Facebook group. His biography called "I'll Sleep Where I Fall" was excellent, but then he followed that up with a book on Zen Buddhism, because he's been practicing for 40 years and he's a Zen Buddhist priest in the Shunryu Suzuki line, which is he's the guy who came here and started the San Francisco Zen Center, which is still a thriving Zen center today. But he goes really into like the whole difference between your thoughts and you as a human, right? Like the whole you are not your thoughts, right? And even back in 1970, the Zen teachers were kind of putting that out there well before the psychologists got hold of that idea. So there's a quote that I found from Shunryu Suzuki, who was the founder of San Francisco Zen Center, and it's this, and talking about your mind, like leave your front door and your back door open. Sorry, I'm actually 12 years old. Allow your thoughts to come and go, just don't serve them tea.
That makes
you
sense.
Get it? It's like you can let them watch these things pass through, but don't invite them in, sit them down, you know. And you know, it's sort of like this guy. You ever hear of this guy called Muji? Neither had I, but he was born in Jamaica. He's a spiritual teacher known for his work in the field of non-duality, which means, you know, no separation between you and
I'm surprised he isn't on like Saturday Night Live hosting. He sounds very famous. Muji. Like Madonna. He's got one name. That could be a brand. Muji.
Anyway.
What does Muji say?
His basic teaching is that our true nature is beyond the mind and emotions and encourages people to discover their inner self through direct experience and self-inquiry. So his quote is, feelings are just visitors, very similar. Let them come and go, but remember you are not defined by them. Your essence and identity are far deeper than the emotions that pass through you.
Feelings aren't facts. It reminds me of that Zen class I took where they described, you know, actually this wasn't the Zen class. During COVID, I got one of those, I can't remember the name of it, one of those meditation apps, the guided ones. And one of the ways they describe, you know, clearing your mind is you have to picture a blue sky and the thoughts are like clouds passing by.
Yes.
And you notice the clouds, but you don't make it the focus. They pass. And you continue to look at the blue sky.
That's so beautiful, man.
Yeah.
So don't get hung up on your thoughts, because I think that is really an issue for people that suffer from substance abuse disorder, is really clinging really hard onto your thoughts and your perceptions about things. And I see this when I drop into like groups like the Stop Drinking subreddit on Reddit, and people, they create these elaborate edifices of excuses and things like why they have to drink and what, know, and it's like you get this idea in your head that like there's something making you drink. Right. And it's like this thought that you have that
I have to.
Right. I have to. Like, who says you have to? Like, is this voice in your head is telling you have to? Like, that's not you.
Yeah.
That's not your real essence.
I'm sure I used to tell myself some things like that, especially early on. Like, I couldn't come up with a logical, which was absurd because I was doing all kinds of gymnastics to figure out, how to make this work. But yeah, it's that, of course I have to. This is, and it's so hard to break through that and reject it.
And those are the thoughts that they're talking about, right? Like you create this thought scaffold that
I said it was hard.
Boxes you in.
But it's not hard.
I mean, it's hard until you can step back from it and see it as not you.
Right. That's easy.
It just takes exhaustive effort and grinding discipline. That's all.
Whiz bomb.
Or you could just turn it over to God.
Right. Let Jesus take the wheel, guys. Let's hope he has a commercial driving license.
Jesus has not been taking the wheel on the Long Island Expressway lately. Have you noticed the way the traffic has gotten the last few weeks?
I have noticed that. I'm not sure what's happening, but
no one is.
I think it's this new crop of drivers coming up.
Yeah.
I blame them.
Yeah, maybe.
So what are we talking about today?
So in this infinite quest for finding things to talk about, I, whenever I'm listening to a podcast, however unrelated to recovery it is, I'm always kind of like, if I can find an angle to sort of attach it to a recovery theme, I'm looking for it. So
everything comes back to recovery.
Well, yes, the work, if you want to call it that, which is not necessarily related to substance abuse, although, it can
It's just living.
Just
living a better life.
Living is the work, right? So I was listening to this podcast. I don't know if you listen to Pod Save America or any of these associated podcasts. There's a podcast network. It's basically a bunch of guys that worked in the Obama administration, and they have all these political podcasts, and I listen to it, and they're funny and so on, and it's great. But one of the guys has a podcast that he does every weekend called Offline, and it's basically him and this other co-host. They get together and they talk about, stuff related to the internet. It's not really a political show. And they're pretty savvy. They're smart guys, right? So I appreciate what they have to say. And so I guess recently this study has been in the news that sort of popped up that basically posited that the mental health interventions that are being used on kids in school have not been effective and have actually shown to increase mental health problems rather than decrease them. So I kind of filed that in my head under something to look into, and I did some Googling, and I found this New York Times editorial from, I guess, back in September of 23, and it was an op-ed piece titled, "This is Not the Way to Help Depressed Teenagers," by a fellow named Dr. Darby Saxby. And in there, he discussed the unintended consequences of so-called light touch mental health interventions in schools and online platforms, especially geared towards teenagers dealing with anxiety and depression. And he took a look at several programs such as Wise Teens, which I don't know if you've heard of that, or school-based mindfulness programs based somewhat on Zen Buddhism, so sort of a tangential relationship to our Wizinator this week. Yeah. And these programs aim to teach teenagers coping skills, but it ended up exacerbating their mental health issues instead. And the article suggested that the programs can make teenagers overly focused on their mental health to the point of interpreting normal life struggles as clinical symptoms. And that phenomenon has a name, and it's called prevalence inflation.
Yeah.
Have you heard of this before?
I haven't just heard of it. I have lived it amongst my younger employees.
Really?
I have noticed an unhealthy focus on their disorders, perceived disorders, how serious it is. It's almost like a badge of honor.
Right.
I've noticed. And it's like they announce it early and often.
Yeah.
Like, I've got autism, and you're like, what? Why would you say? I'm like, you're just interviewing, announce, like, it's weird. And I notice it amongst, 20 to 30 somethings like that. It's really unusual coming from our perspective. Maybe amongst themselves, this is normal.
Yes.
Neurodivergency, and everyone is ADD, PTSD, depression. Like, if you don't have one of these disorders, you just don't count or something. It's weird. It's weird.
It is interesting, and put a pin in that thought because there's some commentary about that I want to talk about in a minute. But so back to the study for a minute. It's basically issues of stigma and labeling are what we're dealing with here, right? Because the interventions discussed in the article say it's basically by focusing too much on labeling emotions and behaviors as symptoms of mental health issues, that might encourage teenagers to see themselves in a more pathological way, which can intensify feelings of being different or defective, contributing to stigma both internally and externally. And it also plays into this idea that teenagers are forming their identities at this point in their life. And this is kind of what you're saying here. And when mental health interventions lead them to adopt labels like I have anxiety, I am depressed, the labels then become integral to their self concepts.
Yep. I've noticed
and
this.
It it gives them tunnel vision to restrict their views and their abilities, which takes away from the ability to be resilient and exacerbates feelings of isolation.
Now, this is a real phenomenon. Yeah. It's scary.
And then, of course, that bleeds over into social media, right? Because you have all these kids now that have a sort of self-identified as having these issues, and then they have a platform on social media. So now there's all this social media content, which promotes concepts of mental health and anxiety and everything, and which leads to overdiagnosis and then self-labeling, which pathologizes normal emotions, but also reinforces stigma by making mental health issues part of your online identity. And the thing that these podcasters were talking about over the weekend that I thought was interesting is if you look at our society, in the last few years, we have determined that our identity, what we identify is like the most important part of our personality.
Your tribe.
Yeah. And so if you fixate on one of these abnormal things,
right,
which may just be normal teenage hormones, but you decide that you have a pathological problem, and then that becomes fixed as part of your identity, and we identify so strongly with our identity in today's society.
Right.
Now we all of a sudden have a situation where you are interviewing people for a job at work, and the only thing that they can talk about is their identity vis-a-vis their mental health.
Yeah,
right.
And even stranger, when they do work for me or with me, I don't actually notice symptoms of it. So long as you don't count this strange over announcing of it. Like I'm not a doctor, but some of my most competent, people who work with me who say these things, it's got to be an identity, a tribal fixation. Like, this is my people. Yeah. I don't know if that's a good thing, but it's definitely real.
It's definitely a thing. And so the way we can connect this to alcohol use disorder and substance abuse disorder is if you look at interventions, just like the interventions that are highlighted in the article lead teenagers to internalize their labels of depressed or anxious, some treatment programs for use disorder can similarly reinforce negative self-identification.
Yes, I'm a junkie.
Right, by calling yourself an addict or an alcoholic, And, those terms are used in traditional programs, let's say 12-step programs, for example, to help individuals acknowledge their challenges, but they can become a defining aspect of your identity. And I think that's particularly pernicious in today's society because we are so grounded in this idea that we have to identify with this identity that if you take on that moniker of alcoholic or addict, then it's stuck. Then it's stuck on you. And how do you move on?
I think that's one of the reasons both of us sort of got away from, or you never really got into 12-step, but one of the things I started to not feel great about was the continuous I'm sick.
Yes.
And the repetition of like, this will be a struggle the rest of my life. You hear this a lot. And it's usually a badge of honor. It's like, I'm going to fight for this every day. And, I don't have it licked. That may be uncomfortable. I would say, like, why would I go to a program that tells me I'll never get better with this program?
Unless you stop going to the and if you stop going to the program, then you're fucked.
Right.
Right.
Meanwhile, I stopped going to the program. I did something completely different that felt right. I don't always recommend that. And things are okay.
I mean, there's millions of people out there who don't want to identify as an addict, an alcoholic, whatever.
It was hard to do that at first, too.
And they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. They have a problem, but maybe it's not like a gutter, handle a day problem. Yeah, but it's enough of a problem that it's impacting their life. But they're not going to go say, you know what, I'm an addict or I'm an alcoholic and go to AA and somebody's going to tell them they have to go to that room for the rest of their lives.
And that raises a boundary to recovery. And that's why harm reduction is so great. And it lowers the gate,
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. It all ties together because now that addiction, like sober is the new black, you hear it all the time. Celebrities, it's this identity. Yeah, I never
Sober
put that
is the
together.
new black.
Sober is the new black. It's very.
What does that mean?
Like when they say something is the new black, it's the new like style. It's what's in.
Oh, you don't mean like black?
No,
like a black person.
No, like black, like wearing black.
I see. Okay, right.
So, like that show, Orange is the New Black.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Gotcha.
Got it. There's other ways you can sort of draw the association between the studies with the kids. And the thing about the study with the kids that I found really interesting is they looked at not just one mode of therapeutic intervention in school. They looked at mindfulness. They looked at cognitive behavioral therapy. They looked at DBT. They looked at like 3 or 4 other things, and the results were the same. Focusing on the problem exacerbated the problem, which is very weird to me because then it sort of begs the question, like, what are you supposed to do? With mental health.
And what happens when a child actually has a diagnosis? And I'll tell you, when Noah had from a psychologist, and it took months to determine this, have an ADD diagnosis that then needed to be acknowledged by the school to get a 504, yada, yada. He actually needed it, but when it came time to allocate the funds to my son, which it was a rejection. Meanwhile, all of his teachers for years have been saying, he's so bright, but he definitely needs this accommodation. It took them a couple of meetings. They're like, he's not doing poorly enough to make these accommodations.
Right.
So on the one hand, they're saying everybody needs this assistance. Everyone has this kind of disorder. And then when someone actually does, it's like, moving a mountain to get them to take care of it.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think they've kind of worked out how to deal with that. I mean, and
the budget's today, by the way, to vote for the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife is, because she's a teacher. Well, I'm sure Erin was probably
She sent me a reminder this morning.
Vote for the budget.
Yes.
So everybody vote yes for the school budget.
Now, I don't have any kids in the district anymore, or won't in the fall, but I will vote for your children.
Well, because all of our children.
I believe, all right, that's right.
I believe the children are the future, and education will lift us all up.
Yes.
It's not about just our children.
So part of that study showed that the overemphasis on symptoms rather than solutions was a problem, right? And if you flip that over into the context of substance use disorder, if you focus solely on the symptoms of addiction, like withdrawals and cravings, without equally emphasizing coping strategies, resilience building, and recovery skills, It can leave people feeling trapped in their condition. And so, any effective treatment needs to balance acknowledging the problems with, effective, proactive, personalized strategies for managing the addiction.
Easy.
Right? Easy. That's an easy one.
It's like a 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. So long as it's not complicated. Is this Dr. Darby Saxby?
Yeah.
Oh. And is this the article, "This is not the way to help depressed teenagers"?
Yes.
What's the website?
I'm kind of working on, it's the New York Times.
Okay. Oh, yeah. The old gray lady.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, that article, the broader dialogue around labeling in mental health, right? I mean, there was a couple of sociologists. My favorite sociologists are Thomas Sheff and Ziad Marar, who is referred to as Zaz. I don't know. I remember reading their work when I was an undergrad. Anyway, Thomas Sheff is a sociologist whose work focuses on labeling theory as it applies to mental illness. So his argument is basically that the societal responses to certain behaviors, say labeling them as deviant or indicative of mental illness, can profoundly impact how people are successful in navigating society, right? Makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. If you label a person as mentally ill, social expectations and reactions can lead to this self-fulfilling prophecy where the person acts in a way to start conforming to the label. So, if I'm labeling you an alcoholic and I tell you, if you have one drink, you are going to fucking end up in a jail institution or you're dead.
And you do it.
And you internalize that, and then you take that drink instead of like going back to your treatment and saying, okay, I fucked up and learning from it. You're like, oh, that's it. I'm done. I broke the seal. Now I'm going to be dead. Let me go out and buy some more booze.
That is the danger. And we talked about this a bunch, like by deifying the day count, especially, and by putting so much pressure, maybe it's not spoken outright. A lot of times it is. When the person does relapse, instead of just doing the pick yourself up, don't beat yourself up, over it, get back to it. It's this defeated, like, oh no, it's going to happen. Everybody's been telling me, all the people you look up to and have been sponsoring you have been saying this. Now you have to do it.
Yeah.
I'm sure I did that, once or twice. Not knowing that was the reason, I just thought, this is what alcoholics do, right? This is what I'm supposed to do.
Right. I mean, once you accept that label as a core identity, then your behavior will proceed accordingly, right? I mean, the expectations associated with that label, alcoholic's going to alcoholic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Alcoholic's going to drink.
But, I mean, I see the benefit a little bit at the beginning because it's a fear. Like, we got to make these people feel like when they first come in, you can't touch another drink. And sometimes that fear of, if you do, this will happen. So maybe where it kind of feels like it makes sense at first to continue. And that's why we sort of talk about, the recovery journey is like, it's like school. I feel like we went through kindergarten, elementary. Okay, now we're hopefully postgraduate and you don't need to learn the alphabet anymore. And it's okay to sort of give yourself some credit, give yourself some power, take your willingness back, your will.
You're speaking danger.
Yeah, I know. My will be done.
But I mean, so let's sort of look at the other side of this, right? Is it not helpful when somebody is first coming in for treatment or realizing that they have a problem for someone to sit them down and say to them, you know what, you are not like the person who can sit there and have a glass of wine with dinner and then proceed with your life normally. You are not that person.
No.
You have an issue. So, I mean, a certain amount of labeling is perhaps unavoidable, right? I mean, you have cancer, you need this treatment.
You can't treat it.
You are a cancer patient.
Right. You have to identify.
But you are so much more than a cancer patient, right? And I think that's where things fall down a little bit in the recovery sphere where, recovery, like you go to a rehab and for 30 days you work on recovery from the substance that you're using, right? But what about the rest of you? Because you're so much more than the person that's just addicted to this thing.
Right. And it's really, from my experience, the 28 days or 23 that insurance will end up paying in these rehabs usually isn't enough to treat the whole person.
Right.
Which is why a lot of times they will recommend a higher level of care, and they have these 6-month to year-long programs, which I was almost forced into, where they take you through a traditional, rehab, then you transition in the town where the rehab is, far away from where your hometown is, mind you. This isn't in your hometown. And they have an outpatient and therapeutic community of like the entire town. It's sort of geared towards you learning to live your life in these different stages.
So is it like...
It's scary.
What was that movie with Jim Carrey?
He's in the fake world.
Yeah.
Kind of like that, except you're there, and your probation officer made you.
So it's like a Potemkin village that you go there and you practice real world skills in.
Yeah.
Is like the shop owner like a licensed mental health counselor? Like,
I think
who
it's
sells you baloney. Like, hey, Tom, how you doing?
It's not far off from that. They explained it to me. It's this year-long process, but you can't go back to your home for a year. And you go through, I'm like, am I really this bad? I don't know how to shop for groceries without like calling my guy. So most people aren't going to be doing things like that, but I don't know what the answer is then.
Well, I don't think most people need that level of intensity.
I would
right?
hope not.
I mean, there are definitely people that do, but
it's expensive.
At the end of that, you still have to go back to your environment. So,
and I knew people who graduated that program, came back to the outpatient I was at. So I heard kind of firsthand how it affected. This particular guy, it worked like a charm. An older guy, retired already, spent a year.
Those are the only people that can spend a year relearning how to live. You put your life on hold for a year. Then your kids are starving and your wife moves on, and
So that's an option. But the 23 to 30 day rehab thing is it's not enough time. For the most part,
I think it's so individualistic. People are in such different places in their lives. Like, should the rehab experience be the same for a married person who is trying to keep their family together versus a single kid in his 20s who's been living on the street? Like,
no.
Should that experience be qualitatively the same?
It can't be, and they do some dividing up of like people, but it's not great. Like, they would divide us up in rehab, and they had like a younger group,
right?
And then like the 30 and ups, and they separate men and women a lot of times. But it really is the same idea program for everybody.
I just like,
but how would you possibly create a system that is individual to each person? It's like impossible.
Well, I think it's necessary. We do it for other mental health conditions, right?
But it's the same hospital, same doctors.
Yeah, but you're not providing the same thing as you are if someone has a physical disease. They're in a bed. They have an individualized standard of care for whatever they happen to be treated for.
Yeah.
But this idea that you can just throw a bunch of people together for 30 days and expect like anything to really happen seems, I don't know, it just seems unscientific, maybe.
Yeah.
To me.
Probably.
And
prayer and meditation, and
I'm not even talking about that. Let's assume it's an enlightened rehab where
equine therapy,
they use like naltrexone maybe, or there's yoga, whatever, fucking vegetarian food. I don't know, but let's assume that the 12 step is not the foundation, right? Would that work better? Like, if you just say take that same random 100 people with insurance, because those are the people that go.
Insurance,
right? And put them in there, and you got the 20-year-old, and you got, older people, grandpas, whatever. Would that make a difference?
It's hard to say because almost all of them are 12-step based. So we would have to look at, I know there are some that are not,
right, and
try and figure out what their reason, but really it's almost impossible because 95% of everything is 12-step.
Yeah.
It's what the judges, the courts, they say, here, you go to AA, have them fill out this paper.
Yeah.
Drug courts require it. I remember I had guys in my rehabs or the outpatient that were in drug court. And the drug court is making them go to these 12-step programs because that's all there is. So we're kind of in a spot with that stuff.
I just don't understand how we as a society have doubled down on this rehab concept, which involves a lot of labeling, which involves a lot of stigma, and with an effective rate that's not very high, and yet that is the prevailing standard.
Yeah, well, I think part of it is nobody knew what to do.
But now we know.
Well,
don't we do better now?
I think we do better.
Can't we do better? We can do better than that, than warehousing a bunch of people. Like, I don't want to spend 30 days with Slim Shady when I'm waiting to get back to work. You know? Like, fuck, you know?
It's a tough nut to crack, to say the least. I don't know. Maybe it's all coming back to treating it more like mental illness, and the people who are being treated for mental illness all have different proclivities and different, some are OCD, some have this other thing.
But then you got to assign a label.
That the label would be
a diagnosis.
Mental illness.
Substance
use disorder. Maybe there shouldn't be a special place just for substance use disorder. Maybe we go back to hospitalization.
But then you run into the whole barrier, fear of being labeled, which will deter you from seeking help for addiction because you don't want to be thrown in with the guy who has to turn the lights on and off 1,000 times.
So there's no good answer. It really is. Everyone has to find for themselves, and we need more options, I think, is the bottom line. There has to be more than just what we're getting. It's so myopic. It's like, and there's some movement out there with the harm reduction movement, which I think is great. More people are surviving longer.
Do we think harm reduction is great? I do. Yeah. But I think getting enough people to really believe in it is a challenge when so many older ideas of what recovery is are so entrenched in the institutions and just the people who are involved in these programs. Because people don't realize to what extent the 12-step stuff is like deeply embedded into the concept of recovery.
It's sneaky.
Yeah. And it's in there. And so stepping outside of that and changing the paradigm is so difficult, I think.
Yeah. You feel like you're being bad.
Yeah.
You're making people mad. So what is the answer? Does the article offer any solutions, like a more holistic approach? What does that even mean?
Well, there were some criticisms of those studies because they don't really they look into these sort of light interventions that are going on in the schools, and if you take these different programs and you take them outside of the school and you do them in more depth, results are a little better, right? So there are people that definitely need treatment for anxiety, treatment for depression, but if you put it in a more professional setting and you're more careful about how you administer it, you have a better success rate. But to me, the takeaway is like you look at this stuff in the context of contemporary like identity politics.
As I often do.
Yes. Well, where personal identity is seen as defining and immutable, the labeling issue becomes significant because the narrative that our identities are central to our being can make it challenging to view recovery as a dynamic process involving growth and change.
Yeah, and we've been trying to figure out how to skin this cat for a long time, and I don't know. I think the other thing I'm noticing that might be interesting to the Monksters is I talk to a lot of psychiatrists just in my work. And sometimes when we're just talking about, their practice, that sort of thing, they have at least 4 psychiatrists in the last month or two have mentioned that when they're doing their treating stuff, they're noticing everybody thinks they have PTSD, and it makes them laugh because to a real doctor, they say PTSD means something very specific.
Right.
It means your life was threatened, and that creates PTSD. And you don't get PTSD from your brother making fun of you. Clinically anyway, you may feel that way, and that's something altogether different. Or they all say, I suffer from depression,
right,
which is also something very specific to a doctor. So they usually chuckle because after they've been diagnosing the person, they say, that's not depression. You're just having a bad, day. It's situational. This isn't clinical depression. So it's created a lot of self-diagnosers along with Google. Anytime you have a symptom, what does this mean? Oh my God, I have, cancer. The self-diagnosis, it's just, and it spills out into addiction recovery.
I mean, there's always been sort of a pop psychology, terms that are used in the mental health profession have sort of worked their way into the general public and are overused or used incorrectly, right? Like the whole, Oedipus complex with Freud and, the cigar is just a cigar and all that shit. I don't know. I don't know. It's a, you're not going to change. You're not going to get people to stop using those terms. Yeah. So there has to be another way to sort of work with those terms and work them into diagnoses and,
I think there has to be an off-ramp, and that's the one thing that I never liked about the traditional recovery groups that I was in. Either it was a rehab. I even went to one outpatient who I said, okay, when do we graduate? Because when I was trying to get my license back,
right,
it was required that I completed, they used the word complete, one of these programs. So, of course, trying to get my license back, I would go to the person, I was like, great, like how many weeks does this go on? Because, usually it's like 8, 12 weeks, you go through stages. And this one place was like, no, we don't, nobody gets a certificate. You never graduate. This is a lifelong thing you must work with. And I said, no. You don't understand. It was like Kafka. I'm like, You don't understand. I'll never drive again. If you don't produce a certificate to my probation officer that says I can drive, I'm going to be taking buses, Ubers, and trains for the rest of my life. And so it becomes an illness on their end because they're like, you can never leave. You're forever sick. Yeah. And that's a nightmare. And I think we can still validate these issues, these disorders, if you will, while providing an off-ramp.
Yes.
And saying, you can get off here if you do the work.
If you do the work. But let's face it, in a medical system that's driven by profits, keeping somebody indefinitely in a program is very good for business.
It's more lucrative to keep someone sick. Yes. There's more money in the treatment than the cure.
Absolutely. All right. On that, maybe we can do a quick recovery in the
news. Yeah. All right. Recovery in the news. Recovery in the news. Recovery in the news. Motherfucker. Yeah.
All right. Today's article.
Recovery in the
news comes from The Mothership.
Yeah,
Have you heard of The Mothership?
Oh, I haven't.
It's a website. Somewhat of a news website. Anyway, Ruth Chai is responsible for this week's story.
Thank you, Ruth.
I will read the title. Japanese man, 59, arrested after hitting wife 62 on the head.
What?
With a banana peel.
Is it wife number 62 or she's 62 years of age?
62 years of age. A 59-year-old man was arrested in Japan for assaulting his wife, 62, with a banana peel in Fukuoka, Japan. Fukuoka. Yeah. Police officers received a call for help from the man's wife at about 8:30 p.m. on May 17th, reports Yahoo News Japan and Asahi Shimbun. The wife told police that her husband had hit her over the head with a banana peel.
Yeah.
She added that he had a history of alcoholism and would frequently verbally abuse her. When police arrived at the scene, they questioned the husband, who had admitted to his wrongdoing. According to the police, the couple's neighbor had parked his car on their property. This infuriated him, and he wanted to confront his neighbor. However, the man's wife tried to stop him. He also purportedly tried to argue with the police, saying that since the matter was between husband and wife, it should not be considered as assault or violence.
Oh. Wow.
However, police reportedly replied that hitting someone with an object, regardless of what the object is,
even a banana peel,
is assault.
Wow.
So, only tangentially related to alcohol, but, I mean, would this man have hit his wife in the head with a banana peel had he not been drinking?
Stuff like this doesn't happen without alcohol.
I have not once in the entire time I've been married to Erin thought about smacking her in the head with a banana peel.
And I avoid bananas like the plague.
Oh, you hate bananas.
They're disgusting. I have a moral opposition to everything about bananas.
So if someone slapped you in the face with a banana peel and they knew about your hatred of bananas, you would find that to be an incredibly insulting event.
This means war. And my brother
you might even
has done it.
Put a dog silencer on him. Does this work for people? If I bark, woof, woof, woof,
there's an audio, kind of.
Yeah.
They have a loud audio version that is jarring.
But I couldn't hear it. They need to make one if people raise their voices on the street after like 10 o'clock at night, that they get a loud noise blasted in their eardrums.
I think the CIA has something like that, with the subsonic frequency that melts your organs.
Havana syndrome.
Yes.
This thing.
And it all comes full circle. So, yes, alcohol creates domestic violence, even when it's seemingly hilarious because of a banana peel. It is horrible.
I like to think of this poor woman who's like, you know what? I have fucking had it.
I have had it.
This guy has been busting my ass for years when he's drinking, and the banana peel, I'm going to get him arrested.
That's the needle in the haystack. Yeah. The banana peel on the haystack.
Yeah, well, good for her for not standing for that.
Recovery in the news? Question mark? Yeah.
Sure, why not?
Why not? Well.
And that's an hour.
That's a quick one today.
They're all going to be quick from now on. If you want more shows, this is how they're going to have to be.
Well, I have some ideas. We've been talking about like a series.
The
series. We're working on something that will be cohesive, interesting, and I think we're going to do like a serial, like the old days. Not like Honeycombs, but one show after the other.
Up to all the Honeycomb Hideout. Sorry.
Well, that about does it for today. Thanks for listening, everybody. We love you. We miss you. And come visit us. We're on Facebook.com. Just search Recovery in the Middle Ages.
Go to Facebook.com.
That's please. Do people still say com? .com. Write us a review. We love to read reviews. Go to Apple Podcast. Find our podcast. Go to the reviews. Write us something. We will read it. And the best way to help the show is...
Share it with a friend.
No, it's to join Patreon.
Oh, yeah, join Patreon.
Right. Patreon.com/Recovery in the Middle Ages. We're all on Patreon. There's video interviews. There's a Discord chat group. And the Monsters are waiting for you to come into our open arms and recover together.
We won't touch you or grab your butt.
I promise. It's all virtual. Yep.
I'm lining up a couple of guests.
Great.
Also, I got a couple of ideas.
Look forward to those guests and possibly a video interview version of it.
Possibly.
And as we say, non proficiat perfectum.
That's progress, not perfection. Now, you won't find any perfection here.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Yeah.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.
Stay fresh. Be good.
Oh, yeah. Be good also.
Be good.
Goodbye. Goodbye.